William Butler Yeats was born June 13th, 1865, in Sandymount, Ireland. As a young child, William Butler Yeats stood in awe of his sea captain grandfather, William Pollocksfin. But it was his father, John Butler Yeats, whose influence was dominant throughout his childhood and adolescence. John Butler Yeats, a not too successful painter and an opinionated skeptic, influenced his son in several ways. Yeats' early interest in natural science, which he later grew to hate, was the result of lack of systematic formal education. As Yeats aged, his interest broadened, as most young men's do. Yeats had grown an interest and relationship with the famous and model of the time, Maud Gonne, who was an incredible child actress who grew to be more famous and more beautiful in Ireland at the time. Yeats had written a play about her a half decade earlier. Shortly after meeting Gonne in London and falling hopelessly in love with her at first sight, the 22-year-old English woman seemed like a goddess and queen to the 23-year-old poet. However, Maud Gonne left Yeats due to complications, with Yeats cheating on her, having a son who later died at the age of 2. As this sequence of events played out, Yeats' mindset and work began to shift, a shift towards mysticism. Mysticism refers to physiological, spiritualism, magic, and poetry, as well as religion. Although it has no direct links with the divine religions, it can be defined as humans' experience of God. For starters, he made sure his work reflected his culture and nation. But more importantly, it was Yeats' fascination with the mystical world. He believed there was another side that had explanations for things. Because he was so talented with painting, verbal pictures, and being descriptive, he caught the attention of many who wanted to read his work. This is the contrast of the natural world's teachings that he grew up on with his father. Later, Yeats married George Hyde Leese when he was 52. Leese dominated his personal and public life. His characterization of her commonly depicted her as troubling of my life. As time passed, the dominant strain of Celtic romanticism in Yeats' poetry gradually gave way to more worldly and topical subjects. Mirroring this transformation, Yeats himself became more of a man of affairs, winning both a seat in the Irish Senate and a Nobel Prize for Literature. His commitment to the Irish literary revival, of which he gave the leader of, and the management of its showcase, the founding of the Abbey Theatre, gave him an increasingly public platform for his personal voice and his voice through his work. William Butler Yeats is recognized as a pioneer in the history of radio broadcasting in the United Kingdom. The talks of poetry readings he conceived for the British Broadcasting Company between 1931 and 1938 display his genuine interest in writing for and speaking to the masses. In this light, the study comes to shed with Yeats' tremendous achievements concerning his sense of nationalism and his role in the reviving Irish culture. Although many had believed that he had no education of nationalism or understanding Irish culture. However, studies prove Yeats revealed a mature vision of nationalism, which most of his contemporaries failed to notice since they only focused on one aspect of Irish identity and neglected the other. In discussing the Irish question, there were many politicians and culturalists, an idea that Yeats developed. William Butler Yeats died of heart failure on January 28, 1939, leaving behind a legacy, a history that changed, modeled, and shaped the political and literal side of Ireland. This was one of William Butler Yeats' many poems. Around this time, William Butler Yeats had just lost his relationship with Gonne, and he starts to shift over his mindset and his outlook on life. And he writes Adam's Curse, and here it is. We sat together at one summer's end, that beautiful mild woman, your close friend, and you and I, and talked of poetry, and I said, a line will take us hours, maybe. Yet, if it does not seem a moment's thought, our stitching and unstitching has been naught, Better go down upon your marrow bones and scrub a kitchen's pavement or break stones like an old pauper in all kinds of weather. For to articulate sweet sounds together is it to work harder than all these, and yet be thou an idler by the noisy set of bankers, schoolmasters, and clergymen. The martyrs call the world. That beautiful mild woman, for those sakes, there's many a one shall find out all heartache. On finding that her voice is sweet and low, reply to the be-born woman is to know, although they do not talk of it at school, that we must labor to be beautiful. I said, it's certain there is no fine thing, since Adam's fall, but needs much laboring. There have been lovers who thought love should be so much compounded of high courtesy, that they would sigh and quote with learned books precedents out of beautiful old books. Yet now it seems an idle trade enough. We sat grown quiet at the name of love. We saw the last embers of daylight die, and in the trembling blue-green of the sky, a moon, worn as if it had been a shell, washed by time's waters as they rose and fell, about the stars and broke in days and years. I had thought for no one but your ears that you were beautiful, and that I strove to love you in the old way of love. That it had all seemed happy, and yet we'd grown as weary hearted as that hollow moon. So, William Butler Yeats' poem is a depiction on really how he's feeling about going at this time. Um, his rhyme scheme, you can see, has gone A A B B C C, and it takes this pattern into the last stanza, and it goes, um, and it changes up, and I think this is a depiction of his relationship with Gon. Um, there are many allusions to the Bible throughout, of course, the title, Adam's Curse, and it goes on to talk about how, biblically it says, since Adam's fall, there's been much laboring and punishment, and he just feels his punishment and his regret on what he's done to the beautiful, as he says multiple times, the beautiful woman that was gone. It's a beauty that can't be taught. And he also talks about, he goes into depth about the curse almost. He says, uh, in his ideas of him as a writer, a curse is a solemn utterance intended to invoke a supernatural power. And this is what Butler Yeats has developed into his writing about supernatural powers and mystical ideas. So he incorporates this with biblical and mystical context while talking about his feelings for Gon. So this was a good poem, I feel, represents that Butler Yeats really did use his ideologies to write about his life.